Good afternoon. I'm happy to propose you today a new podcast as part of Sequence, which is a podcast series proposed by Milipol. My name is Marie Lagrenet. I'm Milipol Events Director. The idea of these podcasts is to get the feedback from security experts on different fields of our sector in order to understand better how they see the future in a such uncertain time. Listening to their project and point of view, we will be fully prepared to embrace in coming years what will happen soon. I'm delighted to welcome today Mr. Paul Foster. We know Paul as he has been invited to take part in Milipol live conferences in the past. His extensive experience of big events security is fascinating. For the one not fully aware of it, let me reintroduce him quickly. Paul is an expert in crowd management operations for major global events and venues. He is Interpol's tutor on crowd management, training gold and silver police commanders all over the world on crowd management best practices. He has been fully involved in London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games. Since 2014, he has advised 3 Olympic Games organizing committees and 2 Commonwealth Games on crowd management. Paul is currently an expert advisor to the Paris 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games Committee and has previously advised the Qatar 2022 Football World Cup, having developed the out-of-venue concept of operations. In addition to it, last year, he created OnePlan, an event planning tool for the events industry. Good afternoon, Paul.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation to talk to you today.
So let me start with the first question. As a result of the relaxing of lockdown restriction, we are now realizing the impact of COVID-19 crisis on our social life. When preparing to host a big event, we all know security matters are crucial to avoid taking any risks for the attendees. But what is the impact of social distancing when organizing these kind of big events?
So until we have a viable and adopted track and trace system in place, or COVID is eradicated because we have a appropriate vaccine, there is going to be some level of social distancing, or what we often call physical distancing, being required.
Okay.
But it must be noted that physical distancing or social distancing is only one part of a COVID-19 plan. It should always include looking at things like hygiene, cleanliness, testing, and education, a big part of educating people coming to a venue or an event. And it's important to acknowledge that social distancing will be highly challenging to implement for many venues and events in multiple scenarios. And we're often relying on the goodwill of attendees to follow directions and comply with the guidance that they are given. So if a venue or a security team are aiming for everyone all the time to be socially distanced, be it 1 meter or 1.5 meters, you're probably setting your expectations too high and facing an uphill battle to achieve that. However, the likelihood and frequency of close proximity and interactions, reducing that down, is definitely achievable. And this is no different to other risk areas. It's often impossible to eliminate risk, but more than possible to achieve careful management of those risks. So in terms of people movement, we generally break that down into kind of 3 areas for consideration, which is time, space, and information. So time, when is the event happening? How long does it go on for? What time of the day is it? What season is it in? And that has a massive impact on people movement. If it's an evening match or if it's an all-day event. If it's an all-day event, they may be arriving over a longer period of time. But if it's a football match in an evening, they may all be arriving at the same time and departing at a similar time. And that brings bigger crowd congestion. So those are some of the areas to focus on. And then space, a very obvious one. How much space do you have available to move those people? And with social distancing, it's a bit like crowd management in reverse, because you need a lot more space to accommodate people with those physical distances. But there's some clever things we can do with one-way flows and how we advise people to move around. And then finally, information. So we often say to people, when does crowd management start? And when should your social distancing plan start? Well, it should actually start when someone's first considering buying a ticket when they're going online. That's your first opportunity to engage with them, tell them the different processes that they may be going through before arriving. And that's really, really important. And particularly looking at those entry points again, there's often the talk about adding temperature checks or different processes in. But if you're adding another process into the entry point, it could be 3 processes rather than 2. So not just security screening and a ticket check, it could be a temperature check, a search and screening, and then a ticket check. And again, there's risk there because the likelihood of crowds building up on any of those 3 processes is probably quite high. So can it be done in a different way? When we're looking at some of these bigger events where a lot of people drive, potentially temperature check could be done before they even leave their car. And then there's a reduced risk of them kind of infecting anyone else. So you've got to think kind of outside the box and working with different partners to consider things in different ways. And my final point to make on this would be, don't start, if you have, say, a 50,000 seat venue, think about, oh, how far do I have to go down? Actually start from the bottom level. Start with maybe 5,000 and build yourself up to 10, 15, 20,000 until you get to the point which your partners and you feel is your safe and manageable limit.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Paul, you have launched OnePlan in 2019. OnePlan is an event planning platform developed to improve safety and security by facilitating calculation and crowd density. It also provides real-time information in order for the organizers to identify and minimize risks and threats on site. Could you tell us more about it, how it has been used so far, and if you see any development in the future?
I've always been very frustrated about the lack of dedicated kind of site planning tools for major events and venues, of which there are many in other industries. So if you're building a new building, you have AutoCAD is a commonly used kind of system. There's accounting systems. Yep. There's nothing really ever been out there for events site planning. And whenever I've worked on Olympic Games or Football World Cup, the most commonly used planning tool is PowerPoint. And then number 2 is Excel. Planners cut and paste from the architectural drawings or from Google Maps, and they place that into PowerPoint and they start to plan in their own way, and everybody does it kind of differently in different formats using different colors and different scales. And a separate document's then created about all the items you need. So an Excel spreadsheet may be created of all the barriers, the workforce, the tents, the cabins, and so on, the signage and everything that you need. So 2 separate documents. Makes it difficult to keep one up with the other. The other challenge of that is there's no security kind of protocols with this. So we often find on games I've worked on before that, very large PowerPoint presentations may be emailed around to hundreds of people to try and keep them up to date with what's happening. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you send that plan, it's very much out of date. So essentially, OnePlan eliminates all that, and it creates your venue or event site plan single source of truth. So everybody can plan in one system together. It's based off a Google mapping system. So everything that you need for your event or venue, security-wise, human resource-wise, barriers and tents, can all be accurately planned, geo-linked in one single mapping system. And multiple people can log in at one time. So you can have different people in different locations logged in, and they can see each other's cursor. So it's really true collaborative planning in real time. So what we call it, it's the Google Docs of site planning. And since launching 12 months ago, over 700 events in 46 countries are now using the platform. Wow. And it's revolutionizing the way that the industry is planning. We've also now built in social distancing calculators, so you can work out how many people you can process through your entry points, looking at certain areas, any area in the world, what the capacity is. And very, very recently, we've just developed the Stadium Seating Bowl capacity assessment, which looks at which seats you can fill in a stadium based on social distancing.
Oh, I see. Okay, and Paul, you've been advisor for Qatar 2022 Football World Cup, and you are now an expert advisor to Paris 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games. So could you explain what your role is in the planning of this huge project, and which are the specific attention points the committee should have according to you?
So I've been very fortunate to work on some of the biggest global events there are, and this has enabled me to kind of amass a lot of different experiences from different countries, from China, Brazil, UK, Australia, Korea, Qatar, and many, many others. But the experience always has to be balanced out with the local environment and the local culture. What works in Rio may not work in Tokyo, for example.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is down to kind of two key things, the physical environment and how that's different, but most importantly, it's culture. Culture is different in different places, how people move, it's culturally different. The size and shape of people is different by different populations, so it has a big impact. And also how people plan and their methodologies and their approach to planning is always very, very different. So the first thing I always do whenever working on any of these major events is go and spend time observing, go to the transport hubs and watch and see how people move around, and really kind of get myself embedded within that local culture to understand that. So my main role with these organising committees has been able to advise them and guide them on best practice and coming up with strategies and tactics to safely move people. And that is prioritised in kind of three areas, which is experience, safety and security. And I often get asked, which one's the more important? And I always say, well, you need to put equal weighting on all these things. The experience is so important for people because they're paying a lot of money for their World Cup or their Olympic experience, and we need to ensure that that's delivered. What we don't want is either the safety or security to negatively impact on that. So they all have to work together really, really closely. And I always find that's one of the biggest challenges. So bringing together those three elements in an integrated and cohesive plan is certainly one of the biggest challenges. Organising committees are highly unusual businesses. When they start off maybe 6-7 years out from an event, they start small, they build up gradually as their workforce comes in. And the last year, the numbers of workforce absolutely explodes. They have loads and loads of people kind of in there, and bringing them up to speed on everything is a big challenge. And then the day after the games or the tournament, most of them disappear. They're all gone. It kind of falls off a cliff. And this brings its own challenges, but also some big opportunities. And what you'll find is those workforces are very highly committed, they're flexible, and they're motivated teams. And that's what you need to make these mega events happen.
Okay, this podcast is coming to an end now. So thank you very much, Paul Foster, for your precious time and testimonial. You can find all our podcasts on Milipol YouTube channel. I remind you that Milipol Qatar will take place in Doha from the 26th to 28th of October this year. I hope, Paul, you will be there. And I really hope to see many of you there as well. But in the meantime, take care.